morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm so glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host. And the goal of our show is to explore a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us that get us thinking, get us imagining, get us talking, get us maybe inspired or challenged to do just a bit more because we've made the connection. So welcome. I'm so glad that you are here today with us. This show is going to be lots of fun. We're co-producing it with Art to Change the World. And we're focusing on social practice art. And we're looking at healing. Lael McDill is my co-host today, and she is the board chair of Art to Change the World. Lael, tell us a little bit about Art to Change the World's vision, and in particular, what you see Art to Change the World feeling about social practice art.
Yeah, it's so good to be here. So, Art to Change the World really started as the basic concept of bringing art, social practice art to people. And our mission is that we are a diverse nonprofit coalition of change makers employing the arts in the service of positive social change. So it's all in there, social change and, art. And that's what we're all about. And we've got some really amazing artist members that are making just some super engaging artwork. And that's what it's all about is, making art that people are really involved in, not just looking at it.
And you've invited some wonderful artists to join us today.
Yes, I'm so excited.
So our first segment, tell us a little bit about Sarah Hansen.
Yes, so Sarah Hansen is a cast metal sculptor and public artist, and I was so lucky to get to take one of her classes in her Wow Mobile, which she'll talk more about, but it's basically a bus that she's converted into a metal work studio. So I got to do that last summer. It was just amazing. We did that through Art to Change the World. So it was mind-blowing, and I hope she'll talk all about it.
Well,
Sarah, so here she is.
Sarah, do tell us about your bus.
Yes. Hi, and thank you for having me, and thank you for including me in the important work that you do.
Well, we're delighted.
Yeah, the bus I was operating a mobile metal workshop on wheels, the WOW, out of a truck and trailer for years, and I just recently was able to purchase a retired Metro Transit city bus and have converted it into a mobile studio that I can go right into communities and offer the entire process of casting and creating right within communities and sharing those experiences. Right in communities. So it's exciting, and I am just doing more planning right now with the downtime.
So tell me about I want a little bit more about the bus. How many people can you take in when you, let's say, roll into the community? And what's the process that you take them through when they are part of this education experience?
Sure. Right in the bus, there are workstations set up for 14 individuals working inside of the bus, and then outside of the bus, tables provide more space for art making. And the classes and workshops that I offer as a public artist, I like to work within the community's visions of what they are wanting to express, collective vision and ideas, and create programming around that. So really customizing the workshop around the environment and the community vision that I go into.
And how did you start doing this? What gave you the inspiration to be working with community and helping to create art in community?
Sure. Yeah, I was art instructor at Interact Center for the Visual and Performing Arts, and that is an adult day program for people with different abilities. And I was working there as an art instructor, and I had the idea to really want to broaden the create opportunities for the artwork that was created there to a larger community. And so I received a Forecast Public Art grant for the creation of a sculpture, the Interstellar Record Project, which really was kind of the start of the work that I do as a community collaborator and an artist and a cast metal maker. It was a combination project, so I was able to do a residency with the artist at the studio and create this Interstellar Record, which is based on the Voyager spacecraft of the Interstellar Record that is out there. And so Carl Sagan, when he was putting that together, you know, put sounds on it and DNA pictures and music of the world, and but they didn't feel equipped to really decide what was representative of visual art on Earth. So this was our take on that. So it's a 4-foot disc cast aluminum sculpture that is housed in a space travel type construct, and it is on Lake Nokomis. But so that was I was able to do the residency with the artists and share their artwork with a broader audience, and we had a kind of a launching of the Interstellar Record with the public with a public event. So we poured metal, and we had a opportunity for individuals to create their mini Interstellar Records, which were also part of the sculpture. So it was really just about the opportunity for this this community to also to engage with a broader community for the event and teach them what they learned and have the opportunity to be the teachers and share their experiences. And so that's really kind of what I, in any case, I like to offer the opportunity for some communities or hidden communities or people that aren't right in front center of society, the opportunity, or they don't call themselves artists maybe, to share their visions and through a creative way. And I find that going right into a community also is people are often responding to the process bringing a little bit more to the experience when it's right in their community, and responding a little bit more authentically and resulting in a much more engaging creative process.
When you're planning to go into a community, what are you hoping, that happens? What is it that you feel is successful after you've engaged with the community, that you can go, it happened. This is what I look for. This is what I hope to have happen. What is that magic thing that happens in the community that you hope for when you go in to work with them?
Yeah, I think it's when there is just this need, a natural need and innate desire for people to have meaningful connections and belonging. I think with the loss of living in tribal societies and with extended families and the decline of church attendance and religion and their lack of ritualistic events that and the pandemic, right, that it just has contributed to our growing need for human connection and belonging, and that if that there has a opportunity to explore and discover together and have developed relationships and strengthen them, and while also honoring and celebrating their individual expression and community vision, collective vision, that is a success.
Lael, you said that you just loved being part of it. What was that your experience as well when you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so amazing because you're getting to do something that is usually in a fancy studio somewhere where you usually have to go and be part of that, but you're actually outside in a bus, and it's very inviting. I think that people like what Sarah's saying is communities that might not normally get all this experience, they actually can just it rolls up into their own community, and it's like right there. And they can have that art experience without a lot of, I don't know, fancy stuff.
And the sense that, do folks feel like after they've gone through that they feel more comfortable considering themselves artists, or at least creating art?
Yes. Yeah. I've hear a lot of that, really. Like the process seems intimidating, or the idea of it is just so unknown. And I think that is also really rewarding when people of all ages, abilities, and are able to realize that have success in their results from the efforts which are laborious. It can be a lot of work to make a sculpture, a mold, and then pour metal. And also I think the results of it, when we're able to create a larger public art piece as a result of longer duration in a community, that also has the extension and longer lasting ability to share those efforts and creative visions as a final sculpture or installation within the community.
I have one last question for you. Do you have any special memory that was like a aha moment, or your favorite memory of something that had a lot of impact when you were doing this program with the community? One special story you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think that I'm still trying to understand the experience working with the Minnesota Society for the Blind, creating visual art and working with the entire process from sculpting and mold making and pouring metal with individuals that are visually impaired or blind was fascinating, and just requiring me to be a better communicator and listener, and offer instruction and teaching, and through that was mind-blowing. And I'm still trying to figure out, how that all impacts me as a teacher and collaborator,
and discovering what that is for yourself.
Yes,
I love
right,
that you're in
yes.
process still with it in your aha, that you're still
Yes,
ahaing.
Sure.
well, Sarah,
Wow.
Sarah, do share your website so our audience can take a look at the work that you're doing.
Great. Yes, thank you. It's sarahhansonwow.com.
Okay, and that's SarahHansonWow.com. And,
right, and that's my personal website. And then the WOW Mobile Metal Lab and Show, there's a link in there, and that that website is being built now, so that will have the upcoming events and programming shortly.
Terrific. And Lael, why don't you share with us the Art to Change the World?
Sure. It's arttochangetheworld.org.
And all sorts of great artists are part of Art to Change the World with missions to make a difference. So thank you for joining us on Connections Radio Show here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. We'll be right back, and we'll be talking with more artists, so stay with us. Good morning. I'm Lori Fitz, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. And I'm so glad you've joined the conversation today. We're talking about social practice art, and we're also going to be looking at healing. We are co-producing this show with Art to Change the World, and I have Lael McDill, who is my co-host, and she's also the board chair of Art to Change the World. Lael, you have brought some wonderful artists for us today. But before we talk to our artists, tell me a little bit more about Art to Change the World and how you got involved.
The board, or the director, Barbara Bridges, she looped me in, and because she is a social practice artist herself, and I did a social practice art workshop with her, which really taught me hands-on what social practice art is. Because Barbara makes you actually come up with a project during that class. So, and you have to go out and, implement it. So Barbara is definitely one to always, not just sit around and talk about things, you know? She's a doer. So, yes, she was actually a protege of Jill Waterhouse, who we're going to be talking to now. Yeah, and Jill is one of the, long-term social practice artists that has been creating as a social practice artist even before they had the name social practice art. So she has been around even way back in the 80s creating with all kinds of different mediums. She calls herself a mixed media sculptor and installation artist, which is really what she is. She does amazing work. So I'm just so happy to have Jill here today.
Welcome, Jill. We're glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. This is a really exciting opportunity to talk about this kind of work.
Absolutely. Now, I remember way back when in the 80s and before there were happenings where you had lots of different things all happening at once. But this is a little different, isn't it, with social practice?
Yes. When I think of happenings, I think more of the performative aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And with social practice art, I mean, there is often a performance component to that. But for me, it's really more about the work itself and how I engage with the work and how I have the opportunity to engage the audience as well.
So you've sent me some absolutely amazing art that I am totally intrigued with, that I'd love to have you talk me through some of it in terms of, the period that it came from. Maybe we can start with the chasm that divides, between the divides.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's nice that you started with that piece because that piece was actually created for an Art to Change the World show. It was actually the debut show called Si C'est Do.
Uh-huh. And
I'm going to back you up to the beginning of the piece, which was actually before Art to Change the World began. This is how my work happens a lot. I'm always amazed at how things come into my life. But the slab that you're looking at, that large cypress tree.
Yep. I was going to ask you if that was like a tree trunk or if it had been sliced some way, like it looks like a slice of tree.
It is. It was a slab of tree that was broken as you see it. Mm-hmm. And I was at a friend's house, who, by the way, is a social practice artist, named Mina Learwood, who's also a teacher. And in her neighbor's yard was this slab of wood laying there. And I looked at it, and my brain just said, oh, my gosh, this is the divide in America. I have to get that slab.
Yeah.
And so I talked to Mina, and I asked her about her neighbor, and she said, well, call her up. So I think I actually was there one day, and I ended up having a conversation with her. And she said, well, it actually belonged to her daughter, but she'd check and see if her daughter would be willing to sell it to me. And when her daughter found out what I wanted it for, she said, oh, Mom, just give it to her.
Oh.
So I ran over there with my car and shoved it in as quickly as I could before they'd changed their mind. Now, this slab was, covered in slugs and dirt, and it was all rough.
And how big is this? This looks like a fairly big piece.
Yeah, the piece itself is 6 feet by 6 feet approximately, but
wow.
With the installation, it's about 9 feet high. So it began with the slab, but what really created the centerpiece for me was an artist who's in another art group with me, and he found that aluminum in the middle, which, by the way, all those holes, those are bullet holes.
Oh. Okay.
So he found this shot up aluminum, and I got to this art meeting, and he said, Jill, I have something for you. And we went upstairs, and he showed it to me, and my eyes just bugged out of my head because I knew immediately that was going to be the center between the two pieces of this slab that has these beautiful curving edges.
And natural and organic and has this grace to it, the wood. But then I was going to ask you about the silver. I did not know that they were bullet holes, but it looked painful. It looked broken. It looked bright and shiny, and yet now knowing that they're bullet holes really brings a real harsh reality to it.
Well, and not only that, Lori, but the edges are so sharp. I actually cut myself while I was making the piece. And, I brought in the flag, which I'll explain in a minute, but I just went, what am I going to do with this blood? Because I wasn't in my studio at the time. And so I just wiped it on one of the red stripes of the flag.
Oh, my goodness.
And then later I realized the import of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was incorporating my blood literally into the work.
Blood, sweat, and tears, as they say, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of funny. But here's the other thing that's so beautiful. So I have a neighbor who's almost 97, and I'm her primary caregiver. And she had this old flag. And I asked her if I could buy it from her and replace it with a new one, and she said, oh, you can just have it. And it was very old and very worn, and so that got incorporated into the piece because I wanted a symbol of the American flag, tattered and torn but not broken.
It almost looks like ribbons coming down.
It does.
It does.
And
The floating
kind of like,
stripes are like ribbons that are floating down right from that wood and from that harsh metal piece.
Well, and if you look at what's below the piece, those hands,
yes,
they were actually created for a different sculpture. It was to be the hands for the male of the Delta Venus piece, which we'll probably talk about later. And then when I wasn't doing that piece, I thought, well, what am I going to do with these hands now? And all of a sudden I went, oh, they can catch the bits of the flag that are falling off. It's like the blood of the people. In fact, when we were at the show, a gentleman from France came up to me because he was so moved by the piece, and he says, Gilles, the ants are catching the blood of the people.
Oh.
And I just got tears in my eyes because I knew that's what it was subconsciously, but I hadn't brought it to the fore, as often happens with us artists. We're doing the work, but we're not aware, sometimes consciously, of what we're doing. And then, so they are catching all of the torn bits of that flag. And then below that are the both the shell casings from a handgun and the shell casings from a shotgun.
And those are red and blue, just like the flag.
You know, it was funny. I spent weeks calling gun shops and gun ranges to see if they had any empty shells, and they all said, no, we reuse them now. And then one day I was talking to my partner, Les, and he said, honey, I've got thousands of those in the basement in bags. Just put out, and I looked through them, and there was green, black, red, blue, and 2 white ones. And the red and blue for me were obviously the flag, but also represented color or people of color. And the 2 white ones were kind of like white people for me, and the changing of the demographics in America.
Well, I also saw the liberal and conservative. I mean, we have.
Yeah. And that was in there too. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, that red versus blue.
Yeah. Which has become such a part of the divide.
Exactly, because that really what was happening. And then, you know, that piece sat there for a year while I worked on some other work. And then when the ACW show became a reality, that's when this piece came into being and all the work started happening. And it was fun because, for example, you know, just how everything came to me, it just felt like it was meant to be. And the Band-Aid box that's in with the bullets or the empty shells, I've had that Band-Aid box since I was a little kid.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I just love those little tin boxes with the flip lids, you know, whatever they are. And I thought, you know, it's maybe a little bit of a cliche, but in America, we have a tendency not to solve a problem to its very end. That would be the best resolution. For example, the issue around race. And you know, what happened to George Floyd is just a symptom of all of what has happened to people of color, particularly black people in this country.
For 400 years.
Exactly. And to me, the Band-Aid box is a way of saying we have to do better than just slap a Band-Aid on this problem. A Band-Aid does not help someone who just lost their arm.
No.
You need a tourniquet, and then you need to really deal with what the problem is. So it became an important metaphor in the piece. And if you look at the slide, hopefully they're in the same order on your computer that's next to that, you'll see there's a little table off to the side that looks kind of like the slab itself. That had a stand on it that had the artist statement with a question that was, you know, which divide is the most challenging or difficult for you to cross? And then I encouraged people in who came to see the show I had these long strips of paper, and they could write down, with all honesty, what is hard for me? Where is that point where I can't cross the divide? Is it religion? Is it race? Is it gender? Is it, whatever your issue is? And people wrote some really poignant things. And then I gave them the opportunity to connect with me by giving me their contact info. Oh, unfortunately, nice. Our show was only up for, I think it was 11 days, wasn't it, Lael?
Yeah. 2 weekends and between.
We had so many programs that people were so engaged with what was going on, they didn't always get to take time to respond to the work. So my hope is, once the pandemic is over, this piece can go and be in a public space. I may have to remove the bullets, the shotgun shells, because they may not want those there. I'm not trying to say, look at all the violence in America. The shells were just a representative of violence.
Well, and they were also, a beautiful continuation. I mean, it flows just beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Because, they do connect back to the aluminum.
Yep, they do.
But, if they're uncomfortable having those in an environment that's public, they can be removed and people can still respond to the work. I could have a picture of the piece in its entirety and then have that opportunity. Because, like I said, what I really wanted was to get thousands of responses and then look at them and see where is it that people are struggling. How do we sort of prioritize those issues, and in what way can we then inform how we make change? And George Floyd right now is a perfect example of where one of our first priorities has to be once we're past the initial issue of the pandemic. I mean, obviously we can't do anything until we get that resolved. Absolutely. Because we're stuck. We're all stuck at home.
And with that, my friend, I'm going to have to take a break. I wish I could keep going, but I do need to take a break and then come back because I want to talk to you also about some of your other works that are just so amazing. And we'll pick which one during the break that you think that you'd most want to share. But thank you so much for sharing from your heart and giving us insight to the pieces that you're working on. Oh, absolutely. And Lael, thank you. Why don't we share websites before we go? Why don't you give the Art to Change the World website, Lael?
Sure. At arttochangetheworld.org.
And did you want to share your email?
Mine, sure.
Yep.
It's h2o.jill@gmail.com, and the O is the letter, not a zero.
And so if you want to connect with Jill about her work, that's a great way of doing it. We'll be right back after just a few short commercials.
The largest Ice Palace maze in the country is going on now at the Zephyr Theater in Stillwater. It's a great way for the entire family to have some outdoor winter fun. Stoutly made with 1,500 ice blocks, the Zephyr's Ice Palace maze is a safe outdoor winter event. The impressively high perimeter wall surrounds and keeps secret the half-mile of twisting passages inside. The reward at the end of the maze, a 36-foot ice slide for kids and adults alike. Then come get some hot chocolate and s'mores to make your heart and hands warm and gooey. And if you're really lucky, you might get to meet Elsa on her way to her own ice palace on the North Mountain. Plus, for the grown-ups, the Zephyr Theater will have an ice bar with drinks for adults. And that's just what it sounds like, a bar made out of ice. Due to safety, visitors are limited to 100 at a time. So have some safe outdoor winter fun at the largest Ice Palace maze in the country at the Zephyr Theater in Stillwater. Tickets and details at icepalacemaze.com. That's icepalacemaze.com.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm your host, Lori Fitz, and we are co-producing this show with Art to Change the World, and my co-host is Lael McDill, who is the board chair of Art to Change the World. Welcome, Lael.
Yeah, good to be here.
This has been so much fun. You've brought such wonderful artists to talk to us about social practice art and healing.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to talk to Jill Waterhouse. Do you want to give us a little background on Jill? We had a wonderful conversation with her in the last segment.
Yeah, she is just an artist that can take something that she finds and make it into such meaningful work. And this next piece she's going to talk about is just astounding. So I'll let her just take it away.
All right. So this piece that you're going to be talking to us about is the Delta Venus. Tell me about that.
So the Delta Venus was created during President Trump's run for office. And it changed quite a bit from its origin, but it really became a platform to look at the differences between how women value themselves and their value or the lack thereof in the current culture.
And this piece is a mannequin woman standing on a shell, and she's draped in some interesting material. So tell me about that piece of art.
Okay, so yes, she's a standing mannequin. She has this beautiful vintage face. She is covered in shredded money, and it's real money from the Federal Reserve. And then I did patterns of money on her, I hope I can say this on the radio, on her breasts and her gluteus maximus to draw attention to those areas because that's what the culture values in women. You know, it's their sexual parts.
Absolutely. And then there's also like a fan that she's holding.
Yes, she's holding a fan. That was for two purposes. One, to disguise her damaged hand, and two, because it represented images of women throughout culture, throughout many cultures that have been in positions of either power or the lack thereof. And the fan itself is also a symbol of secret communication. You know, in some cultures it's just used to cool yourself off, but prior to modern times, the fan was used as a way of flirtation, as a way of disguising what women were thinking, and in Chinese cultures, women would write themselves, they'd have a fan partner, and they'd write letters back and forth in a secret language that only they knew. And so it was a way for women to communicate without men knowing what they were saying. So the fan, in this case, actually has a very important role in the piece. And you'll also notice in the front, again, I hope I can say this, in the pubic area, I drew in hair, but in the hair is written, "We are so much more than this." And that was my reaction to Trump's statement about what he could do with women's bodies.
And grab
because
them.
Because he's famous, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I was working on this piece, I had wanted to do a second piece about men, and I created this concept called the Man Project. I don't know if that'll be its final name, but, you know, men, as much as particularly white men, have a certain kind of power in the culture, they are also vulnerable to the way the culture holds expectations for them. You know, the idea of toxic masculinity and white male privilege, it gives them a lot of power, but it also takes a lot away from them in the sense that they can't be vulnerable the way women are allowed to be without having their masculinity questioned. And so I wanted to give men a chance to talk about, you know, how do they see themselves as opposed to how they are in the larger culture, and how do those cultural perceptions both serve them or prove to be toxic to their physical and mental health. And I've talked to a number of people about this, and people are getting really excited about it. My hope is I can work again with Bill Doherty to kind of create the framework for how I would engage with men, because obviously they may not want to just talk to me unless I have a male partner that makes it feel more safe for them.
Sure. You know, I think it's fascinating in that it's a great contrapuntal to, you know, the image of women and the forced roles that we are put in and expectations. And to have something that allows an exploration of the forced roles and how does that limit and yet also maybe produce some in the change, some things that go back to the piece that we talked about in the last segment of, is this part of the divide that we're experiencing as well? And are there changes happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, you know, if we, you know, like we were talking on the break, if there is a way to help empower men to be full human beings and not see that toxic masculinity as just a power, but also as a detriment to them, there may be part of the solution of what's happening, these insurrections where people they're feeling empowered by doing violence.
Right.
Instead of by doing right or well within the context of the culture and their families and the world in general.
Well, it's a wonderful expression of art to change the world. And it will be. Will this be something that we should track through Art to Change the World when you get this going?
I hope so.
Oh,
I hope
good.
this is something we can bring to the fore, and maybe other people will engage in that concept and produce other work around the same topic.
So that's a great way to encourage our audience to go check out arttochangetheworld.org. Take a look at some of the cool art and artists that are involved with Art to Change the World. And thank you, Jill, for joining us today and sharing your art and how art can, through social practice, heal and heal both women and men, and perhaps open the door to a new reality.
Oh, thank you, Lori, and thank you, Lael, too. I so much appreciate all the work you've done to make today happen.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you are here.
And we're excited. We're going to have to go to break now. But in our next segment, we've got another artist that's going to be joining us. And he'll also be sharing about how his art is helping to change the world through social practice and healing. So stay with us. We'll be right back after a few short commercials. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and we are co-producing this show today with Art to Change the World. It's a great nonprofit. And we have Lael McDill, who is my co-host, and she's chair of ACW, Art to Change the World. And thank you so much, Lael, for bringing such wonderful artists today.
Yeah, it's so much fun to share the amazing art that the artists of Art to Change the World do. And I'm so excited to bring Jason Randall in. He does work that is like nothing you've ever even imagined before. He's a creative technologist, which just already makes you go, what is that? So he's designing with these interactive electronics. I have not seen it in person, but just checking it out on the website, that's amazing. And after the pandemic, I am totally going to see it face-to-face. So, Jason, it's so good to have you here.
Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Lael. Nice to hear you.
Yeah.
And nice to hear you, Lori, as well.
Oh, thank you. So, Jason, I'm looking at your website, and I've opened up your sculptures. And do you call them electronic sculptures?
Yeah, that's a tough thing for me. Currently, I'm going with interactive electronic sculptures.
Okay.
Because that kind of covers everything.
And I'm intrigued with one that you call Help. And it looks to me like this beautiful glowing red light, but it throws shadows and light on the wall of all kinds of dimensional pictures or not pictures as much as maybe graphic designs. Tell me about this piece.
Well, Help is meant to explore the concepts of isolation, separation, and identity as it relates to COVID-19. So during the pandemic, we were all kind of shut in for a while, and I realized that we all need a little help right now. But the word help can mean many different things. So for me, I wanted to approach it in a couple of different ways. And so, once masks started getting worn and everyone was isolated behind acrylic barriers, and we were all staying in our homes, Help started looking a little differently to everybody. And whether you were, a storekeeper or a healthcare worker that was offering help to someone else, or whether you were a person seeking help from a storekeeper or a healthcare worker, you would look like you had a mask on. You would look impersonal. You would be behind some isolated barriers, and we would not look human anymore. So Help looks that way when you first look at it. It looks off-putting and abrasive. But if you look a little deeper, there's a synergistic, interactive brain inside of it. And as you talk to it, it picks up the sound of your voice, and it reacts. And
so you
displays different colors.
So you can, when you talk to it, that's when it reacts and has different colors on the wall?
That's correct. Exactly. Right. It reacts to the sound in your voice. So,
how cool is that?
Very cool.
So the idea was that even though, we look with a mask on and we're behind acrylic barriers and it seems like we're inhuman and impersonal at this point, if you look a little closer, either at the storekeeper or whoever you're dealing with, we're all alive. Mm-hmm. We're all paying attention. We're all living our lives, but we're just separated right now a little bit.
And we
so
react.
The idea with help.
And we react to sound. And we react to sounds of voices. You're absolutely right.
That's right. And so the idea was that, as you talk to it and it reacts, it reminds you that it's still alive and we're still alive. So maybe the next time you're interacting with, one of our humans, you'll realize we're all still alive. We're just separated a little bit by some barriers.
What a wonderful reflection. What a wonderful way of looking at the challenges that we're facing and producing them in an art form. Now, we have just about a little over a minute, and I've got another piece that I would love to have you share about, and it's called Refilled. And it looks like it's this beautiful oblong, but it's this gorgeous blue, just intriguing blue. It's night blue almost.
Yeah, well, Refilled is it's made entirely out of reclaimed materials. It's about 1,000 individual pieces. It's made of prescription pill bottles and a satellite dish. It also contains interactive electronics. But this one is meant to show what can happen if what you get when you email and internet everything through the satellite dish and through the internet to you. So, how can I put that better? Well, let me see.
Well, I give it I only have a couple more seconds, then I want to have you make sure that you share your website so folks can see it. So, if you want to just sum up what Refilled means to you.
Refilled just represents everything that can be refilled. So you can order over the internet and get sent to your home somehow.
Well, I think it's absolutely beautiful, and it is very intriguing and well worth taking a look at. Tell us how to check out your website.
JasonRandall.com, JAYSON, Randall, RANDALL, JasonRandall.com.
Jason, thank you for joining us today. And
absolutely, Lori.
And Lael, tell us a little bit more about Art to Change the World and then how to get the website.
Yeah, please check out arttochangetheworld.org, and you can become a member. We're doing a member drive right now. We'd love to have you. Only as low as $25, you can become a member. And we're doing some really interesting projects, so definitely check out the website.
And we're planning to do some more Art to Change the World shows in the next few months. So stay tuned to be part of our show with us. We'd love to have you think about being an artist. I think we talked about how cool it is to do projects, and sometimes you might be intimidated and not consider yourself an artist, but we all have that art within us. And Art to Change the World is a great place to join other people and maybe explore your art. Thank you for being a part of the conversation today, making the connections, and exploring how art can be a social practice and support our healing. Have a wonderful week.